So in this chapter, Chihiro is essentially defeating Hirohiko, the Hishaku member that he's been fighting for the last couple chapters, in possibly the best sequence of the series, where he uses Kuro unlike we've ever seen before. But I'll get more into that later because it happens at the end of the chapter. But coming off of the end of the previous chapter, we saw Chihiro resuming his fight against Hirohiko after they isolated themselves from the train, while Chihiro is trying to protect the enchanted blade users. Their fight eventually led them to this theater, and Chihiro has been unable to land any meaningful strikes because of Hirohiko's paper sorcery. And also, he has like this weird fascination with Chihiro and wants to be his friend, which will be explored more later on. But in the beginning of this chapter, we're seeing a flashback of Chihiro, Samura, and Shiba. And we're seeing that Samura did teach Chihiro some sword skills, but most of his training came within the 3 years prior to the story. We also see Samura go more into why he doesn't consider himself a hero despite winning the war for Japan. And of course, it ultimately comes down to them killing tons of people. But we come back to this flashback later on, and going more into what we were talking about, Samura says the first time that he cut a person, he couldn't stand to see severed flesh, and that's another reason why he blinded himself. We know that he blinded himself a couple chapters back because more or less he's trying to control his urges or something like that. But of course, it goes more so into the atrocities that he saw and committed. But coming back to Chihiro taking on Hirohiko, coming back to what I was talking about, how Hirohiko wants to be friends with Chihiro, and he eventually is able to compartmentalize exactly what he wants here out of this quote-unquote friendship, and is essentially to be like a shonen rival to Chihiro, except not the kind where one of them turns and they ultimately become friends at the end. It's kind of like where they're friendly in the fact that they're trying to kill each other. Hirohiko is, obviously like a psychopath, so he can't understand normal relationships and whatnot. I mean, he even says he never had a friend before, so it's, understandable. But Chihiro, of course, is like, yeah, this is all nonsense, and he just tries to attack him again, but is still unable to land a meaningful strike because of Hirohiko's paper sorcery. And Chihiro's like, all you do is run, which is funny, but Hirohiko, with the solid response, is like, well, you have an enchanted blade. Unprotected close combat would be suicide, which is very true. Like, Chihiro is the MC and we're rooting for him, of course, but he does have a very overpowered weapon at his disposal that no one else has, except the other enchanted blade users, but you know what I mean. I mean, the whole reason why Hirohiko is here in the first place is to kill the existing users of the enchanted blade so that the Hishaku themselves can use them. So yeah, if Hirohiko has to play like the stall game and play dirty kind of to win, it's understandable. I mean, that's also the main reason why they're in the movie theater. He's using the other people there against Chihiro because he knows that he's only going to kill quote-unquote bad guys. Then Hirohiko starts to use like his origami sorcery, starts like summoning cranes, which are strong enough to slash through a body. And Chihiro's trying to figure out how to go about this sequence, because if he uses Kuro, he could clear the paper to see better, but he might also hurt innocent bystanders because of the way that the fish spread and whatnot, along with the slashing vicinity. And then he thinks maybe you can use Nishiki to move about quickly, but the cranes chasing after him would still hurt the bystander. So then he says, so you'll just hold your ground. With other people around you, you have to be careful with that sword. And if he does that, he's essentially doomed to death by 1,000 cuts. And Hirohiko goes back into the whole thing that he was talking about in the previous chapter about how they're both monsters because they kill people and they're both young and kind of prodigies and whatnot in this whole sorcery assassin game. He starts talking about a play where an enemy takes hostages and the hero, Sasuke, is paralyzed and the enemy gets away, which is essentially what we were just talking about. Hirohiko assuming that Chihiro is just going to stand there trying to defend the bystanders. But then going further, Hirohiko's like, but Sasuke's garbage. You can't worry about a hostage or two in real life or you'd be dead. You're a killer, but the moment of truth, you want to play the hero as if you weren't just a monster. You're one of us, so who are you going to sacrifice? And as he expected, Chihiro is just standing there getting lit up by the cranes. And as this is happening, he remembers back to that flashback we were talking about with Samura, about blinding himself because of what he had seen and done, and how he could feel himself become a monster. And Chihiro's like, but even so, you chose to wield an enchanted sword to save everyone, right? And Samura's like, yeah, I just had to keep going through the darkness. So it's not something that anyone should aspire to. I'm definitely going to hell. And then Chihiro's like, well, instead of admiring you, I'll just respect you instead. And as we come back to real time and the papers are surrounding Chihiro, he realizes that he's essentially going down the same path as his father and comrades, where they ultimately didn't want him to choose their path, which led them to hell. But it seems like he's going there anyway because he's activating Kuro, and it's like emanating from him, almost like a symbiote or something, but I'm assuming this is just the fish spreading themselves to the point of where they are engulfing the entire room and it becomes pitch black. Now, I'm just taking a guess. I think the sequence is up for interpretation, but it seems like he's filled the room to where not even Hirohiko can see anymore, and Chihiro just speed blitzes behind him and takes both of his arms off. And then once the lights come back, we see that Chihiro is just standing over Hirohiko. He doesn't even know what happened. And Chihiro's like, don't worry, I'm a sinner too. I accepted that I'm a monster, but the least that I can do is refrain from causing harm to others and take all of you from the Hishaku to hell with me. Now talk. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Hofsco, because I just picked up their Hov Alpha 26-inch electric fat tire bike, and this thing is absolutely incredible. It's probably my favorite possession. Just looking at it, it's incredibly aesthetic, but it also has a 1300 watt motor with a high capacity integrated battery that gives you a range of up to 80 miles per charge. It also has a max speed of 28 miles per hour, as well as a 450-pound payload capacity, along with an intuitive LCD digital panel, front suspension, hydraulic disc brakes, a Shimano 7-speed shifter, a headlight and a tail light, as well as a solid aluminum crankset. It also has this really cool thumb throttle that allows you to just cruise without having to pedal. Like I said, this thing is incredible. I feel so safe on the road with it, and it's so powerful. It easily blasts through hills and incline and goes through rough terrain and the forest like it's nothing. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to get it, because it's kind of difficult to go through trails and unpaved roads with traditional bikes. I also don't own a car, considering that I live downtown in the city. I don't have to deal with like car insurance and parking and mechanics and any of that stuff. I just get around no problem with this bad boy. So guys, check the link in the description and make sure you use code BIGZ for $100 off. Thank you guys. And that's where the chapter ends. So yeah, awesome sequence, maybe the best in the series so far. But we might see Hirohiko spill the beans here, because that's essentially what Chihiro wants from him. That's why he's been keeping him alive at this point. But let me know what you think about it in the comments, guys. If you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.